Welcome to Beyond the Label, the podcast that brings you closer to people, purpose, and the progress of fair trade in Africa. In this episode, we are talking about something that affects farmers, communities, and everyone around us. That is sustainability. In studio today, we are joined by Chris Oluwatch, who is the Programs Director for Fairtrade Africa. Chris, as climate change threatens crops, livelihoods, and ecosystems, how is Fairtrade supporting farmers to not only grow food, but also grow people?
Thank you so much, Santi. And as you rightly stated, indeed, climate change is really affecting so many livelihoods and becoming so disruptive, especially for the farmer. Fairtrade, through our partners, and other like-minded organizations, we have a number of interventions that are going towards supporting the farmers mitigate the effects of climate change. For instance, we have, through programming, we have some projects that are running that are specifically addressing the issues, for instance, around the carbon footprint. And to this end, we have implemented a number of measures to ensure that the emissions are properly managed from the farm level to the processing and to the transportation of the products to the markets, through mechanisms such as ensuring that the farmers adopt clean energy mechanisms for cooking, for lighting, which reduces ultimately the net impact on the environment in terms of destruction of the forests. We also have some other initiatives that are geared towards, for example, agroecological management. And in this case, we have a good example of a project that is running, which we call the dynamic agroforestry, the dynamic agroforestry project. In this project, we promote the diversification and, the intercropping of food crops, within the cocoa farms in West Africa. So it is not just about the mainstream commodity product that we are looking at, but we are also encouraging the farmers to intercrop crops such as yam, plantain, and the vegetables within the farm, within their farm, so that this then can become an alternative source of livelihood for them, making it easier for their food sustainability, but also for discretionary, maybe income that is coming out of these other streams of crops. We have some other interventions like beekeeping in some countries that we have been promoting. If you go to Malawi, we have supported quite a lot of some farmers there to start their beekeeping businesses. And again, this in a way is diversifying their income streams, but at the same time, giving some sense of food security to those farming communities. So across the continent, then we'll have quite a number of initiatives that are running, ensuring that we take care of the health of the farmer as it were, but at the same time ensuring that from their mainstream crop, they are able to get some income that is sustainable.
What would you say are some of the most pressing climate challenges that farmers are facing?
Yeah, there are many, quite a number of them, but, you understand that with climate change, then comes the erratic nature of the weather patterns and, stretching the farmers through the extremes. Either the temperatures are too low to support any growth of their crops, and that then would lead to, damages that come from the scorching of their crops on the farm. But at the same time, you could go to the extreme, where we have very high temperatures, that then leads to drying up and withering off. But again, when it rains in bounds. So you are having quite a lot of incidences of flooding, landslides, and of course then the other aspects around cyclones that have affected quite a lot of farms in the South Africa region, Yeah, so all these complexities and make it very difficult for the produce organizations and the farmers, as it were, to be able to produce at optimum levels, but at the same time, maintain the quality of the products. Climate change has led to a lot of prevalence of diseases and pests. So this, in a way, leads to deterioration of the quality of the products we present to the markets. And that is why then it becomes a big challenge to the farmers.
Yeah. I know that one of the things that sets Fairtrade apart from other sustainability labels is the premium. So how's the premium being used to mitigate these challenges?
Yeah, the farmers, one beautiful thing about the Fairtrade certification scheme is that the farmers have the liberty to use the Fairtrade premiums on the areas where they have identified as priorities based on their business models. So in this case, then we have seen quite a number of farmers committing some of the Fairtrade premium towards implementing measures, for example, that lead to adaptation to climate change, adaptation to clean energy mechanisms or cooking and for lighting, but also just for rehabilitation of their farms, planting trees, putting up tree nurseries so that they can supply seedlings to their members, and all these practices, recycling their wastes, like turning the coffee husks into briquettes for cooking. Yeah, so they have used the premiums to support quite a number of initiatives that end up alleviating the situation. That is, caused by climate change.
Chris, just in general, do you think, there are so many challenges around climate change and how it's affecting the producers? Do you think that we are moving fast enough in general, or do you think that a lot more can be done to mitigate climate change?
Personally, I would feel a lot more can be done, and it calls for a kind of a collaborative effort from all the players and the partners, including the governments, from where, the farmers are based. Climate change mitigation measures are very expensive to start with. So farmers on their own are not able to implement adequate measures to mitigate effects of climate change. We also have now an expansive scope of regulatory frameworks with the EU requirements, like the EUDR requirement, talking about the EU non-deforested products, that are allowed into the EU markets. Yeah, we have the EU organic requirements and all these other, global pressures that are coming through for the farmers. So this will require that at the policy level, then the governments have very supportive policy frameworks and are able to advance some subsidies that make it easier for the farmers to mitigate effects of climate change. Yeah, but generally, calling upon a collective effort from all the partners and players will be very helpful in supporting the farmers to mitigate effects of climate change.
Yeah. So I think maybe my final question would be, what would be your heart call, if there was such, for both producers, consumers, social services, or all of those to come together, to work together towards mitigating climate change?
Yeah, my rallying call would be that across the value chains, we each contribute a part. As it is at the moment, the burden of compliance, the burden of making the adjustments that are necessary to mitigate effects of climate change are borne entirely and, almost entirely by the farmer. And you realize these are burdens that the farmer cannot afford on their own. So if we can have all the players across the value chains, from the farmer to certification bodies like ourselves, to the market players, the retailers, the traders, to the governments coming in, development agencies, that will lead to a holistic approach that can deliver a better farming environment for the farmer. Otherwise, if you leave it to the farmer on their own, this is quite a big burden for them.
Yeah. Thank you so very much for taking time to join us, Chris. That was Chris Olwach, the Programs Director for Fairtrade Africa. And as we heard that there is so much work that still needs to be done around sustainability, specifically within agriculture. For Fairtrade Africa, this is Sandra Global.